Part 15. When I was a part-time lecturer. It was spring of 1987. My father told me some good information that he heard from a neighbor. A construction company was offering a special sale of high-rise apartments in Anyang. I visited the model house in Anyang with my wife, and we followed the company staff to see the apartment site. The apartment was near Mount Surisan, like a hotel near a national park. The price of the 103 square meter type of apartment was 33 million won. I was short of money, but fortunately I could borrow 10 million won on a long-term loan for housing, and the remaining 9 million was conditional upon 1 year's payment. At that time, it was not easy for me to prepare tuition, so the 9 million won that I could have to pay in a year was a big burden. I wanted to buy a 93 square meter apartment because it would be easier to pay for it, but my wife made an unreasonable proposal to buy a 103 square meter apartment. Even if we eat soy sauce for a side dish, we need a big house for the 7 of us. In fact, even a 103 square meter apartment was small for the 3 generations to live in. It was an unreasonable challenge, but I paid 1 million won to make a preliminary contract. I rented out the house I used to live in. After a few months, real estate prices, including my apartment, began to rise significantly. The government then announced plans to build up 4 new towns in Bundang, Pyeongchang, Sembong, and Ilsan. The construction of a new town caused a sharp rise in labor costs and material prices. Apartment prices had more than tripled in a year. The price of my apartment also exceeded 100 million won. God really helped me. If I had not bought this apartment, my family would not have had an opportunity to live in an apartment. However, it was a problem that I prepared 9 million won that I had to pay in a year. I visited the securities company during my lunch hour like other office workers. There, the stock price board was full of electronic displays, and the numbers representing the current price moved like a wave. The stock market was a place where attractive investments could be made. Everyone rushed to securities companies with money. According to many people with investment experiences, the stock market rises after the real estate rises. If I were to invest, it was all 500,000 won in cash loans with credit cards. I bought stocks of a commercial bank with this money. There was a rumor in the stock market that stocks of banks, construction, and securities companies were promising. People called these 3 stocks Choika. The rumor and my hunch were right. The balance increased without a single mistake while I repeated the buying and selling. In less than a year, 500,000 won became 4 million won. This money was very helpful in paying the remaining of the apartment. I realized the proverb that says, "Every dog has his day." When my second brother was in his 4th year of university, he was hired by the nation's leading electronics company during the first semester and received a scholarship for 1 semester. As the home appliance industry was booming, large companies in the electrical and electronics sectors rushed to hire talents to secure manpower. I worked hard at the association and was recognized in the office, but I was omitted from being promoted for several years. Luck did not follow me, and there were many seniors who delayed promotion in the association. I could not rely solely on this job for the future. In the meantime, I received my master's degree and attended a professional college as a part-time lecturer, but I was giving up my PhD program because I did not want to be stuck paying for school. In order to find my way to teaching, I took the entrance exam for a PhD program at the graduate school. With 2 months left on the entrance exam, I enrolled in a reading room near my house and prepared for the exam every evening. As it happened, The Ministry of Education was increasing the enrollment for PhD programs as well as universities. As a result, I was lucky to have been accepted into the doctoral program. Good things continued for me. Thanks to the consideration of my superiors, I was promoted to the section chief. The seniors told me that the year of '88 was the year of fortune. In 1988, a religion began to sprout in me. At the recommendation of my neighbor, living in the same apartment building, I started to go to church at the entrance to the apartment complex. My wife had been going to church for a long time. She said she was able to overcome all her difficulties by attending church. I felt sorry for my wife, who always lived a nervous and uncomfortable life with my family. I thought the church was my wife's refuge, and I wanted to go with her to help comfort her. At the minister's recommendation, I took a 6-month Bible study at the church in the evening to be baptized. While studying the Bible, I confided to my minister. When I was a teenager, I thought a lot about religion because my heart had nowhere to rely on. Once a year on April 8th, by the lunar calendar, I went to a temple with my mother. I liked the sound of reading Buddhist scriptures, and the words of the Heart Sutra made me think. At that time, there were monks who went from house to house and asked for donations. A monk once said to my mother, "Your son will succeed only if you hold the Buddhist Mass." My mother believed what anyone would say to her in general. Meanwhile, when my father was drunk or troubled, he used to play the sound of someone reading the Buddhist scriptures with his cassette recorder. He listened to the sutras regardless of time and place, even though he said he only believed in himself. I hate the sound of the sutras. It's because of my father. However, I cannot believe Christianity easily because it is a religion that came from the West and does not touch my heart. I studied the Bible for 6 months and was baptized during Easter service, but I still could not confirm God's existence. At the baptism ceremony, the minister wet my head while on my knees, and I was baptized in front of the minister of my age. The senior in the neighborhood asked me if I was embarrassed after the ceremony. Rather than feeling ashamed, I felt that kneeling in front of people and being baptized with cold water was the first step in my training to find peace of mind. Such a good thing had happened to me, but hard times were to come. My sister was in poor health and gave birth to daughters who were born in consecutive years. My parents brought her baby home. My mother and my wife were in charge of raising the child. However, my wife played the role of mother for my sister's daughter for 6 years. My mother often had to help my father with his work. It was very hard for me to attend the postgraduate doctorate program. It was not something that could be done easily. I had to go to class about 3 days a week, but it was burdensome for me to attend class during work hours. It was not usual for a mid-level official to leave to go to graduate school. I had the most work in the association. Furthermore, at the recommendation of my professor, I attended a lecture in the evening at my alma mater. As a result, I did not have time to prepare a lecture. Most of the professors gave us a large amount of homework, and they asked us to present in class one by one. In the course of a PhD, the professors seemed to have an easy time giving lectures. The professors seemed to have to know only the important points. I often stayed up all night to write the assignment that the professor regularly gave me. Once I submitted the assignment, I suffered from fatigue. One day, I started to write my report in the evening and finished it at 4 a.m. the next day. My wife was with me every time. When I completed an assignment on the computer with the help of my wife, she would be a great assistant. The computer was essential to the writing of the assignments. Meanwhile, my son usually played games on an 8-bit computer and asked me to buy a 16-bit computer. It was because the game program became bigger and more complex. I bought the best 16-bit AT computer on the market, and I bought a small printer with 8 pins. The price of the 16-bit AT computer produced in Korea was at least 3 million won. Fortunately, I was able to buy a Taiwanese-made computer for cheap at Yongsun Electronics Store. I also bought document-making software to write my homework. The software was recently released in Korea at the time, with a version of 1.1. I was able to edit and save data from time to time, so it was convenient. When I finished typing and hit the input for printing, the little printer rattled and then drew a black character with a ch-ch sound. It was amazing. In the old days, if you needed to make corrections while typing, you had to erase it with a rubber eraser or scratch it with a knife. Such primitive work was no longer necessary. We lived in a civilized world, and now we could easily write many documents at home. I realized that the world had improved a lot. It was my choice, but I was exhausted and tired because I had no time to rest when I worked, studied at the graduate school, and assisted in the research of an academic advisor. I even lectured 4 times a week in 2 colleges, but I could not prepare the lectures properly. Because of that, I could not give a faithful lecture. I lost a lot of weight because my health got worse and I had pain all over my body every night. When I lost my energy after a day's work, my left ear, which had tinnitus, sounded worse. Thinking about it later, I do not know how I played 3 roles. However, I did not have a chance to become a full-time lecturer. I applied for the professorship at my alma mater and other colleges, but it was a tree I could not climb. I recounted Socrates' famous saying, "Know thyself."